Hi, this is Thomas, and this is a short video regarding a change in one of our processes when conducting EPiC online sessions. I'd like to start by giving you a quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt. This is something which we use a lot in our organization, and I feel is very important. Rules are not necessarily sacred, principles are. And herein lies one of the core culture of our organization, in the sense that everybody needs to know the reason behind rules, because rules are not just there for the fun of it or for the sake of it. Rules are there for a reason. And nobody has any business in implementing rules for which they don't understand the reason. So for you as staff members or as coaches in Ganesh Team and for EPiC Online, you are encouraged to question rules, and you have to get answers for why the rules are there. So for these pre-session speed tests is something that we are going to change the process. So we'll start by telling you why did we do them in the first place? Why do we have these pre-session speed tests? Well, we wanted to be sure that the sessions will run smoothly, and so we wanted to check beforehand that the internet connection of the student is stable. And to establish if it's not stable, that the problem is on the student side. We presume that on the coach side you have already checked that your connection is okay. So if we can establish that the problem is on the student side, then the student or the client will get charged even if we cancel the session. I think that's quite important. Now, why do we do it 3 times? When the connection is not stable, it fluctuates. So if you just do it once, you might catch it when it happened to be good. So doing it 3 times will give us a reasonable chance of catching the connection at its low point, or at one of its low points. What are the problems with this rule or process that we have had? We had a few problems. One is that students get impatient because they have to do this every session and they wonder why, and we have to keep explaining to them. Many of our students' English are not very good. That's why they are on EPiC online sessions. So they have trouble understanding the procedure, and then we spend a lot of time in instructing them what to do, and this takes time away from the session. And we found that most of the time the results are okay. So before we start a session, we don't know whether the session will run well or not. So we just do a test anyway. But most of the time they're okay. So which means that actually I think statistics show that more than 90% of the time it's okay. So we're doing these 3 speed tests, and of which 90% of the time is kind of for no reason, because the connection is fine. So how do we simplify this rule process and preserve the principle, bearing in mind the principle? We will drop the pre-session tests for the simple reason that most of the time the sessions are fine. So why should we take this extra step for the situation for most of the time when there's not a problem? So we need only to focus on when there's a problem. So when the connection is no good, and when you start your session and you find that it's choppy, you can't hear the student, the student can't hear you, then you will ask the student to do the speed test. And here again, we presume that on the coach side, the connection has already been checked and stable before you start your day, before you start the session. And in doing the speed test, if the results are below our requirements, and you know what our requirements are, they are stated on the slide here, then you tell the students that the student's internet connections are not meeting the EPiC online requirements. And then you ask the student if he or she wants to proceed, providing it is tolerable. If you find that you can't have a good session, then you have to tell the student you have no choice but to cancel. But if you find that it's tolerable, then you give the student the option to continue or to cancel. You have to bear in mind that if you persuade the student too hard to continue with the session with a bad connection, or less than best connection, it might affect your evaluations. And if your evaluations are affected, your pay rate could be affected. So you have to draw a fine line there. The other thing that you should do is to try to improve, if you decide to go ahead, to improve the likelihood of a good session, is to ask the monitoring team to host the call. Very often we find that by doing so, it does help. Next, I've got the possible scripts here for the different situations. When the connection is not good, that's what you tell the student. You start by asking the student to do the speed test. And then when you find that the result of the speed test shows that the connection is bad, but not too bad, and you find that the audio is tolerable, then you give the student the option to continue with the session. That's what you could say. You don't have to repeat it word for word, but basically that's what you ask the student to say. And if the connection is really very bad, and you found the speed test, if you find that you can't really hear the student can't hear you, or it's very choppy, and then you establish from the speed test that at least one of them shows that it's below our threshold, then you have to tell the student that we have to cancel it because it's not fair to proceed. So those are the 3 scripts we have written for you. Again, you can choose to use it, or you can slightly change the wording, basically just to deliver that message. If you have any questions about this change in procedure or rule, please do post on Facebook groups. It's always good to let everybody else also see the questions and to understand the answers and how we answer them. Or you can ask monitoring team, especially if you are in session already and it's urgent, you can always ask the monitoring team what to do. Thank you very much.